One thing I briefly talked about was the ability to have code coverage, and let's take a look at what code coverage is and what you can do with this. So in order to generate code coverage in the first place, you have to enable the Xdebug PHP extension in the system where you are running the tests. So this could be either locally or maybe inside of Docker or Homestead or Vagrant. So I'm not going into detail how you can enable Xdebug in there. It's just a PHP extension that you can install and enable. In most of the development situations, it's also enabled by default. So as I said, we have in our PHP unit XML file these whitelists, which include all of the directories or files that will be used for code coverage. And then we have these different kind of loggings in here. So one of them actually is coverage text. And when we run our tests, this file will be generated. It's inside of the build coverage.txt. So if we take a look at this build, now we have coverage.txt. And in here, we can see that from our classes, we have 100% tested our classes. We have 100% tested our methods because we have tested 2 out of 2 methods. And we have tested 4 out of 4 lines of code. And then we can see it even further broken down. So here we can see that the joke factory has tested all 4 of the 4 lines and all 2 out of 2 methods. So this means that whenever we write tests, PHP unit actually tries to look up the amount of code that we have tested with our tests in place. So for example, if we would not have a test for the random jokes, and run the tests again. All right. Now go to the coverage text. Now we can see that we have not tested everything because what we have done is in our constructor, this now never gets called because we removed the test where we actually pass in additional jokes. There's also a HTML representation of this coverage report that you can create, which makes it a bit easier to see which methods and lines of code you have actually tested. So let's take a look at this next. You can generate this by using the vendor bin PHP unit command, and then just add --coverage-html, and then tell it the directory where you want to output those files. So let's just call it HTML, run again. Now we have a new directory called HTML, which has a lot of files in it. And then let's just open HTML index.html in the browser. And now we have basically the same output as in the text file, but in a nicer way. So now we can browse through our application code and see that the joke factory is only tested 75%. So if we take a look at this, we can now see that this line never got tested. Makes sense because we removed the test. So if we go and put it back in place, rerun the tests, and refresh the browser, this line is now green, as we can see that this test covers it. It's now all green. And if we go here, we can see that we have tested 100% out of our class. Now, let me tell you one thing. Code coverage is nice, and you should also aim for getting a high coverage, but do not push it too much. It's not worth it trying to reach 100% code coverage just for the sake of reaching this code coverage. But instead, what I think is better is try to come up with a mix of different kind of tests. So for this package, we right now just have unit tests, but depending on the package, it just makes more sense to have a broader variety of tests. For example, unit tests, then you have integration tests that test the whole thing built up together and test more the way that your package will actually be used at the end of the day. So what I'm trying to say is code coverage is good. You should have an eye on it and try to write tests for as many methods that make sense to get tested as you can, but don't be hard on yourself if you cannot reach 100%. That's not bad at all. All right, so this is what the code coverage is for and how you can use it in your packages to ensure a high quality of code.